Good afternoon and welcome to our June Keys penguin habitat. My name is Frankie and I'm an aviculturist here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. And if you saw me feeding, then you saw our last feed of the day for our Magellanic penguins. Now these penguins can be found off the coast of Chile and Argentina, and if you need a visual, you can see a map just to my right hand side on that alongside that whole wall. And we have 23 birds here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, 13 of which hatched here since 2011. 4 of them are Brazilian rescues, meaning that they were found stranded, deemed non-releasable off the coast of northern Brazil, which if you take a look at our lovely map I just mentioned, that's pretty far away from Chile and Argentina. So they most likely were following a food source and became stranded. Maybe they ate all that food and didn't have any other options, and through human intervention, about 30 birds were deemed non-releasable, not fit to survive in the wild, but they were still okay to survive. So we were able to take in a few, and today we have Kate, Avery, Robbie, and Roxy. And their genetics are very important to the Magellanic, the subset of birds within zoos and aquariums. So we have 23 here, but there's about 230 of them throughout all of the USA. And through all of their genetics, with what we have right now, so long as no siblings are reproducing or closely related cousins, we are good to continue the longevity of these birds and their genetics for the next 250 years. So those stranded birds, although they had an unfortunate ending to their wild experience, they are able to allow us within zoos and aquariums to continue to have these awesome habitats and have these birds act as ambassadors to the rest of the birds out in the wild. Now there are about 4 million Magellanic penguins off the coast of Chile and Argentina, and they hang out in huge colonies or groups or flocks of birds. And right now they're in migration season. So migrating, that's just another word for traveling or transporting. These birds have a very specific migration season, and they couldn't do it without their annual catastrophic molt. So all of these birds have molted or replaced their feathers. They are birds, so they do indeed have feathers. And that catastrophic molt is really extreme. They are beached for 5 to 6 weeks while they replace all of their feathers. And these birds have over 75 feathers per square inch, so that's hundreds of thousands of feathers they're replacing in a 3 to 5 day period. And then they spend that rest of the time in those 5 or 6 weeks taking care of their feathers and waterproofing them, because they're brand new feathers, so therefore they're not waterproof. So once they're beached on the deck or on the land or wherever they are in their natural habitat, they actually have no access to food because they're not waterproof and they only eat fish. So they are bulking up before that migration season so that they are nice and ready to be on land, so they can work on maintaining those brand new feathers. So what they will do is they will dip their beak into their uripedial gland, which is right on their tail side. You can see a couple of birds are preening right now. Sometimes they'll use their flippers on their head or their head on their body, but basically they dip that beak into that uripedial gland and it gets coated with oil. So it's also an oil gland or a preen gland, and that is what allows these birds to be waterproof. So when they get their brand new feathers, they are spending day after day, hours, all day long, preening their feathers to ensure their waterproof coating. So when you look at these birds right now, you can see beads of water rolling off their backside, and that is a wonderful example of a good waterproofed coat or plumage that these birds have. I would say all of these guys are good to go, and they're in the midst of they're in the middle of their migration season. So they all molted very nicely and they're migrating. And once this season is over, once they've swam about 2,500 miles, they go right into their breeding season. Now Magellanic penguins do mate for life. Not all penguins do that, not all birds do that, but this species does. So we have 9 burrows or nest boxes to my left and behind me, and that is where they will lay their egg, build their nest, lay their egg, and raise their young. So we do have 23 birds and 9 burrows. We have several birds that are not mature enough yet to have a mate or to lay an egg yet. So those birds don't necessarily take up any of that burrow space. But we are almost at capacity, so really having to think about eggs and our game plan for the next year is important for us. But once migration's over, the male will come on land first and they will start building the nest. They'll collect materials. Here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we offer sanitized palm fronds. It's just what we found out they liked. And we're able to work with the city of Long Beach when they cut down their palm fronds once a year. So it works out for us, win-win for them. They don't have to dispose of them. We get to sanitize them and reuse them for our penguins. So the males will come build the nest, and once it's nice and ready, the female will come on land. And like I said, they mate for life, so they make these small contact calls, which we might hear in the water today, we might not. And those are just how they can locate each other through sound. So they try to go to the exact same area every single year and nest in that same space. And they're pretty territorial and can be aggressive, so they will own their space, and if someone beats them out, then that was a very intense fight, and that happens sometimes too. So once they lay the egg, both parents will take part in incubating or brooding the egg, meaning that they will both sit on the egg. And then if and when that chick hatches, both parents will take part in feeding their young and raising their young. They just will do one bird on the nest and one bird in the water, switching off every single day. So the bird on the nest that day is feeding their chick, while the other bird is in the water hunting for food so that they can feed the chick the next day and sustain themselves. Here at the aquarium, once the chick gets just old enough and curious enough to exit their burrows, I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Once they get curious enough to exit their burrows, we actually take them behind the scenes into our nursery, and that's where they learn how to eat from us. They gain their waterproofing, they learn how to preen, and at about 60 to 80 days old, these birds are fully grown and come back to the colony here in our June Keys penguin habitat. And at that point, the parents don't necessarily acknowledge these birds. They're just kind of here, new additions to the colony. And those youngsters will actually look like juvenile penguins for an entire year. So if you remember, at the beginning of my talk, I talked about that annual catastrophic molt. Penguins won't do that for an entire year. So they don't get their adult feathers until 1 year later when they molt. So right now, all of our penguins have adult feathers, which tells you that we did not have any chicks in summer of 2019, but we did have 3 summer of 2018. So you may see some photos floating around any of our social media that show you that we've had some juveniles recently. And that's kind of the full circle for these guys. But I do want to talk about what just happened. These birds are very skittish right now. We are in migration season, which means they're out on the water, and this is actually the only time of year that they have their true predators coming after them. So they have to be very alert and aware of every single noise they hear. So that gull just came down from the top of the tarp. It spooked them. Sometimes I drop things. It's more than sometimes I drop something like my pen or the lid to the food bucket, and they all jump in the water. I don't try to do it, but it does happen. Sometimes even the garbage can's closing, they hear it and they dive in. And that's really good. If there was a bird that wasn't reacting to these noises, we might wonder if everything's okay with them. So them going down, it is technically a stressor, but it's a good stressor. It means that they are alert and aware. And if there was something that we felt was different, we are able to be with them every single day so we can acknowledge all of what's normal for them, so then we know what's abnormal. So all these penguins have very different personalities. So not only can we ID them with their bands that are on their flippers, which you guys can do that too. If you look to the left or the right of the exhibit, you'll see each name is color-coded with 3 colors. So if you see a penguin at the window, you can figure out who that was by looking at the sign. But we also can look at them, and we know their different spots that they have. We know who comes to the bucket first. We know a lot of different personality traits between them. So that also is very helpful for us. And I think that's all I'm going to say for now, but before I sign off the microphone, I do want to thank you all so much for coming out. We would not be able to do what we do here at the Aquarium of the Pacific without all of your support. So if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to anyone in a blue polo, and that includes myself if you see me exiting the habitat. Thank you.